I've sat through plenty of uncomfortable conversations, but nothing prepared me for what my wife said in that therapist's office on a Thursday afternoon in March. "You're the biggest disappointment of my life." She said it with such conviction that Dr. Sterling shifted in her chair. The room went quiet. My wife leaned forward, voice building like a freight train. "I've wasted 8 years of my life believing you'd change, believing you'd become the man I needed. But you're just pathetic." Before the therapist could intervene, I did something everyone in the room, and I mean everyone, didn't expect. I smiled, not bitterly, not sarcastically, just a quiet, relieved smile. Then I said 4 words that changed everything. "I can't argue with that." My wife's mouth dropped open. She'd expected tears, begging, or outrage. Instead, I leaned back and said, "You know what? You're absolutely right. I have been a disappointment to you, and I'm about to disappoint you one final time." She laughed, sharp and disbelieving, like this was another empty threat. "I'm leaving," I told her. She thought I was bluffing. I wasn't. I pulled my phone out and showed her the confirmation email. "I filed 3 weeks ago. I moved my things out while you were at your sister's. I opened my own bank account last month. I've been preparing for this for a while." Color drained from her face. Dr. Sterling tried to take a step back. "Perhaps we should schedule individual sessions," she said. "No need," I replied, standing. "This session just became very productive." My wife stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. Maybe she was. 8 years of swallowing criticism, pretending it was constructive, and shrinking myself finally caught up with me. I'd been the man who walked on eggshells for too long. That version of me was done. "You can't just leave," she said, smaller now. "We can work this out." "Work what out?" I asked. "You told a licensed professional that I'm your biggest disappointment." "Not disappointed about a thing. You said I am your biggest disappointment, period." Dr. Sterling didn't have a success story that began like that. She made a quiet, neutral sound. I told my wife I hoped she'd someday find someone who didn't disappoint her. I also said I hoped to find someone who didn't see loving me as a burden. I walked out. My phone started ringing before I reached the parking lot. I let it go to voicemail. By the time I got to my car, there were 6 missed calls and 3 texts. The drive to my friend Carson's house gave me 20 minutes to breathe. Carson's face when I walked in said it all. "How'd it go?" he asked. "About as well as you'd expect when someone calls you their biggest disappointment in front of a therapist," I said, and we laughed, sort of. The timing of everything had been calculated. I'd moved money into a separate account months earlier. My name was being removed from the lease at the end of the month. She could keep the rental if she qualified on her own. I'd spoken to the landlord. I'd planned for the logistics so I could leave with my dignity intact. Her calls and texts escalated overnight. At first, it was reasonable. "Can we talk like adults?" By 2 a.m., it was bargaining. "I'll do therapy alone." By 4 a.m., anger. "You're being unfair." By 6 a.m., desperation. "Please don't do this." "I love you." I deleted them all. Carson told me not to answer. "Let her sit with it," he said. "If you pick up now, she'll think there's room to negotiate." Word spread fast. Her sister texted, "What did you do?" "She's hysterical." Her mother called with guilt. Her best friend called with outrage. Even cousins I'd barely met reached out. But something surprising happened, too. A few mutual friends texted private messages that told a different story. One of them said, "Good for you. That woman's been treating you like garbage for years." I kept that message. At the grocery store, I ran into Kelly, my wife's best friend. She tried to shame me. I called out the pattern. The interruptions at dinner, the public humiliation, the way my opinions were mocked. I asked one simple question. When was the last time she genuinely complimented me? Kelly went quiet. She couldn't answer. That silence was louder than anything she said. Dr. Sterling called 3 days after the session. She wanted to see me individually. I almost said no. Why continue therapy after the marriage was over? But something in her voice made me curious. So I went. Sitting alone in that same office felt different. I felt lighter. Dr. Sterling was direct and clinical in a way I needed. She told me what she'd observed over 6 sessions, 0 genuine compliments from my wife. 17 instances of criticism, dismissal, or mockery, just in those sessions. Chronic contempt, she called it. Not normal disagreement. Contempt. Hearing it from a neutral professional was both vindicating and painful. I wasn't imagining it. The dismissive eye-rolling, the interrupting, the habit of belittling me, someone else had counted and documented it. She also warned me that my ex-wife was blaming me. She'd asked the therapist to convince me to come back. She even hired a new counselor and a lawyer overnight. Dr. Sterling told me plainly, therapy can't repair a foundation of contempt. My decision to leave wasn't impulsive. It was the end result of years of being undervalued. After that, the messages shifted. Her sister and a few family members reached out to apologize. Kelly admitted she couldn't remember my wife ever offering a real compliment. Even a cousin from Phoenix sent a sympathetic text about how miserable family dinners had felt. 2 weeks later, Dr. Sterling called again to say she would no longer be seeing my ex-wife. Professional differences, she said. My ex-wife refused to accept responsibility. She blamed poor communication instead of contempt. She accused the therapist of bias when the therapist pointed out patterns that hurt our relationship. I started rebuilding my life. I joined a gym. I reconnected with friends she'd made me stop seeing. I had coffee with people who actually listened. I learned what a normal conversation felt like again, conversations without correction, without contempt, without having my feelings dismissed. Months later, the divorce was finalized. My ex-wife moved back in with her parents and began telling people I'd abandoned her. That narrative didn't stick with those who had seen the marriage up close. The people who mattered knew what had actually happened. One afternoon, an unknown number texted, "I get it now. I really was your biggest disappointment, wasn't I?" I stared at the message. I typed back, "No, you weren't my disappointment. You were my lesson." 6 months after that Thursday at Dr. Sterling's office, I was sitting in my modest one-bedroom apartment. I'd rediscovered small pleasures, reading what I wanted, eating without stress, sleeping without dread. I felt lighter. I felt like myself. The biggest lesson was simple and brutal. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for someone you once loved is refuse to let them treat you badly. Sometimes the biggest disappointment you can give someone is showing them exactly what they've lost, not through cruelty, but by becoming the person you were always meant to be once you stopped letting them tear you down. If you made it this far, please consider subscribing. It helps us a lot. I've picked 2 other stories I think you'll like. Click on one, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye for now.